Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and I've put over 400 miles so far this week on this 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLC Coupe. We're out here on the western side of Michigan doing a little road trip visiting some family, and we've gotten to do it in this compact. It's technically a compact crossover, but it really gets more and more compact when you consider the fact that we have the sloped off version of the standard GLC SUV. So in this video, I'm going to tell you some of my pro and con takeaways from my time with the vehicle, and we're going to put it on the Daily Motor leaderboard. So first things first, the GLC Coupe gets refreshed for 2024. They refreshed the normal GLC in 2023, gave it a little bit of updated styling, although it takes a little bit of a keen eye to notice because it really doesn't look all that different from a lot of the Mercedes-Benz products over the last 10 years, especially the SUVs. But we've got a 48-volt mild hybrid 2-liter turbocharged powertrain setup in there, which makes for very smooth operation in all sorts of driving. We have some updated infotainment. We also have a 15-speaker Burmester 3D surround sound audio system, of which you can see a dedicated review linked below. So without any further ado, let's get on into it. And the first con comes from the fact that with this sloped back design and this very small and raked rear windshield and these big D-pillars, the visibility is quite limited. And I understand that you're going to have limited visibility for a type of vehicle like this. But then, Mercedes, why don't you have a rear view camera mirror for us? It's 2024, nearly 2025, and I'm pretty sure you can get a rear view camera mirror in $35,000 Chevys. So why not, with this coupe design, do we not have one here in this vehicle? I mean, you're looking out the back. Hopefully you can see it well enough in the camera. I can hardly see anything behind me because of that big rear hump there. And the rest of the visibility around the car isn't fantastic either. If you look, if I'm trying to change lanes or something, you got those big C and D pillars really blocking things off, and it's a fairly high windowsill as well. So there is a little bit of the claustrophobic feel in this car. That's going to be a pro to some people, but a little bit of a drawback for me, especially when Mercedes isn't helping us out trying to make the rear view camera a little bit more functional, or at least the rear view mirror, I should say. Next, you still have to pay for a lot of features in this car, despite it already being decently expensive. This one we're sitting in right now is $67,000. It has most packages on it, but we're still missing things like ventilated seats and a heated steering wheel. And that is because Mercedes will charge you individually for those features in the build configurator. And on one hand, I kind of appreciate that you can individually pick out a lot of features that you want, but it does kind of stink that you're dealing with a luxury brand, a full luxury. We're not even near luxury like some of the cars we had within the last month or two. This is a full luxury product, and yet they still nickel and dime you for those features. So we've got things like $2,000 for the driver assistance package, which is giving us active lane keeping and active lane change functionality. We're going to talk about that later on. A night package, which gives us essentially just black bits for $200, the AMG line, which we spend $3,000 in order to get a lot of AMG styling, and then one I would probably pay for, the Pinnacle trim, giving us heat and noise insulating glass, augmented video for navigation, and a head-up display. I understand that Mercedes-Benz still needs to make money, and it makes sense to charge it a little extra for some of those features, but it is just a weird feeling knowing that you're getting into a luxury product and you still might not be getting features that, again, you can find on much cheaper vehicles. Next, on one hand, I appreciate the Mercedes-ness. I've talked about it in old videos on Mercedes. I think we had the GLB class not too long ago, and I talked about that. But I have been noticing more and more that Mercedes-Benz is really pushing the whole Mercedes star and Mercedes branding really up to the next level. The other day we were behind, I think it was a CLA class, and there were Mercedes-Benz emblems in the taillights of the vehicle, and it really started to look borderline gaudy. And then I noticed with this vehicle as well, you get up to the grille here, and maybe this is just with the AMG line or something, but these are all little Mercedes-Benz stars that are slightly chromed out. So really, when you're looking at the front of this vehicle, you're viewing hundreds of Mercedes-Benz stars built in. On one hand, it's kind of cool, but on another hand, it's like they're really pushing it. I mean, if you went around and tried to count the Mercedes-Benz stars on this vehicle, you might lose track because there are just so many. Next con, this car has been buggy for us. And it hasn't been a deal breaker con, but it is a little bit disencouraging that you're driving a $67,000 car, and throughout my week with it, I've just had little inconsistencies that have taken away from the experience. For example, first got into the car, paired my phone up, super easy. It's a very straightforward process in Mercedes-Benz's. You can even be driving and still hook a phone up via Bluetooth. It's very quick, and we got on the road. I had my wireless phone projection going smoothly on the car. Well, then the next morning, I woke up and I went to go meet Chris Amos and Chris Brower from the Topher and Topher Drives, and that entire time I was driving the car, Android Auto would not work. I even unpaired my phone, repaired it, turned my phone off, everything. No wireless phone projection working with the car. It wasn't until I turned it off, turned it back on again, which I didn't want to do until I had gotten to my destination, because I didn't want to get off the highway and stop and take that extra time. It wasn't until then that it actually worked. And throughout the week, we've had various notifications for Parktronic sensors not working once or twice. I had this notification earlier today while filming that one of the seatbelts wasn't plugged in, and it just stayed up for my entire drive. I've got a photo of it here, and it's a little bit scary, because I would not be worried about owning some sort of luxury vehicle like this from a mechanical standpoint. I think they've really got the motor and the powertrain, the transmission, everything down pat. But I would be worried from an electronic standpoint. It's not encouraging to see that we're still having bugs with this system that has been out now for a little while. This next con is pretty subtle. However, Mercedes has a very good active lane keeping functionality here in the GLC. You pay a little bit of extra for it, but right now it's driving us along on the highway, and it's not quite a full self-driving or semi-autonomous where it's watching me and I can leave my hands off the wheel for more than 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds or so it reminds me to wiggle the wheel and show that I'm still here. And it has a very good lane change functionality as well, and it goes so far as to have an automatic lane change functionality. But my complaint comes into the fact that when you have the automatic initiation on, it beeps at you every time. And even when you're playing music, it turns down your music in order to beep for you. So we're going to demo it here in a moment. It's going to automatically change lanes for us, and you'll hear the beep. And there are other brands who figure out ways to have vibrations in the steering wheel or vibrations in the seat in order to not be as intrusive for the sound or for the initiation. Right there, so you heard that beep. It makes that every time. And in some degrees, if you're just driving alone and you're riding quietly and everything, yeah, it's not the end of the world. It's not that big of a deal. But let me turn on some of our copyright-free music here. All right, so you're driving along listening to music, or you're talking with somebody in your passenger seat. And then frustrating that is? It's like you're jamming out to your music and driving along, and all of a sudden it drops out for half a second. So it's just a very silly choice from Mercedes. I get the safety aspect there, but come on, put a vibrator in the wheel or something like that. Come up with a more elegant way to do that, because what it has resulted in me doing is just simply not using that feature and doing the manual initiation. Now on to the pros. Now I do like quite a lot about this GLC Coupe, and part of it is, yes, we talked earlier in the cons about missing some of those more basic features, but what you don't realize on paper with full-on luxury brands like Mercedes-Benz is you're getting a lot of features that are more implicit. You don't really notice them on a sheet of paper looking through the window sticker, but you notice them either living with the vehicle or perhaps in situations like an emergency or a crash, where the engineering and the protection that are built in and gone for the extra mile really show themselves through. Perfect example is earlier today in the winding road video, I went to fold the rear seats down, and in many vehicles, especially this size, this compact crossover size, you go to fold the rear seat down and you hit the front seat and you have to move it. But in this one, look at that. It automatically moves the front seat forward just enough for the rear seat to clear here. And that's one of those really subtle type features that you're not going to see that on a sheet of paper compared to maybe one of the competitors, but when you actually use the vehicle, it is quite nice. And because Mercedes has been doing features for so much longer than a lot of other brands, you'll find that certain features just work better in this car than they do in a lot of competitors. Things like the rear kick open tailgate. I test so many vehicles, I come up, go to kick open the rear tailgate, and it doesn't work consistently. Whereas every time that I've been in this Mercedes and I've come back with my arms full of luggage, I go and kick back there, and it pops right up. And look at that, it opens quickly. The motor sounds smooth and confident. Will it go closed as well? It will, yes. So even though it might have some of the same features on paper as some competitors, they often work better in this car. They're just better executed. There's a higher quality of craftsmanship and work and functionality to them. I also saw that with the active lane changing feature in the car, you can change lanes. I think we'll talk about it more on the highway here later, but you can change lanes and it simply works rather than it being frustrating to use like some other vehicles' Genesis. Next pro comes from the infotainment system. Now, this infotainment system might be a bit overwhelming at first, but that's because it is very powerful. There's a lot you can do with both the big center touchscreen here, the gauge cluster screen, and the head-up display in front of you. We've got good satellite view maps. We have quick responsiveness for everything you're going to want to do in here. We've got wireless phone projection. We have this cool off-road functionality. Look at this. You can bring this up either here or in the gauge cluster screen. You see your tire pressures, your tire temperatures, your satellite position, engine data. You see a compass, you see an altimeter. A lot of features and functionality built into the system that admittedly many people aren't going to use, but if you take time and you learn how to use it and you play around with it, it shows you that, oh yeah, there's a lot that this vehicle can show me and can do more quickly than a lot of competitors. Now, again, I know some of this functionality can be cumbersome and overwhelming at first. That's why you have to take time and learn how to use it, and then you'll realize that it does work quite well. And on top of that, the interface and layout is better than a lot of vehicles I've recently tested. A lot of cars like the QX80 I just had, the screen is so far away up onto the instrument panel that I have to reach way off my seat in order to touch and use it. Whereas this one, I can sit comfortably and either reach over and touch it, or I can use these controls on the steering wheel and move around the screen. Now, I don't much care for their operation, but it is nice that I at least have that functionality. Next, Mercedes-Benz's commitment to high-quality sound systems. Burmester continues to be one of my favorite audio system brands in vehicles. They're consistent. Even in the inexpensive Mercedes, they sound strong for their class. This one getting the second step up of the Burmester system. It's strong, it's customizable, it's predictable, it's a nice sound. And while it might not be the best sound system that I've ever tested, it's strong for the class, and I just know that anytime I get in a Burmester branded system from Mercedes, it's gonna be good. No difference here in the GLC. And furthermore, I appreciate that they give you the personal sound profile that actually steps you through and allows you to create a custom EQ for the sound system to cater to your listening preferences. That's that little extra mile care that Burmester and Mercedes gives you that you don't get from most brands. Starting it up here for our next pro. And you hear that rather than listen to some sort of starter shake the vehicle, it simply comes to life. And that is because this GLC is now running a 48-volt mild hybrid powertrain. And what that means is that the starter is much, much more powerful than your standard 12-volt system than you get in older and less advanced vehicles. And that means that we can get a little bit of extra efficiency through some regeneration and some extra power there. But it also makes the driving experience so smooth. So we've got a turbo on a 2-liter inline-4 engine here. But when I go ahead and pull out here, there's going to be a moment before the turbo is making much power. So it can step in with a little bit of electricity there from the mild hybrid system and fill in that power gap until the turbo comes fully online and can take over and do the propulsion from there. And you'll also see that if we get into a situation where I come up to full speed and we see the transmission shifting down. We're in 7th gear now, 8th, and then we're going to be in 9th any moment. There we go, 9th gear, cruising at about 1400 RPM. And if I lean on the throttle just a little bit, we see the power indicator go all the way up for a quick sec. That means it's giving me a lot of electric help right there from the electric motor. And then right after that, the turbo can kick in and kind of take over. And I don't feel any of that. It means I didn't have to downshift out of 9th gear just to accelerate a little bit. And then when I really get on it went from 9th to 3rd gear and then accelerated hard, and again, that electricity helping propel the vehicle a little bit. My next pro is that, unlike a lot of other brands these days, Mercedes has stuck more to a luxury and smoothness and comfort focus for the GLC Coupe rather than a sporty focus. They understand that they have AMGs that they can sell you that'll be very hardcore, very sporty, and very aggressive. But no one, if someone's just buying the 2-liter turbo here, the GLC 300, that's not what they want. They want a smooth, comfortable luxury experience. So as soon as I got into this vehicle at the airport, I appreciated the light, easy steering and the thick sidewall on the tires. That means that we could go over this pretty broken, rough pavement here in rural Michigan and still be absorbing the bumps nicely. It's less that the suspension has to do and more that the tire can take up from that brunt. We're seeing in a lot of other competitors these thin sidewall tires and this kind of sport-tuned suspension, just because some magazines like to take vehicles out to the skid pad and see how quickly they can go around a corner. That's not how most people are really using their luxury vehicles. So I've appreciated getting to put on 400 plus miles here and just have this be a quiet, smooth, comfortable experience. This is going to be perhaps a little bit of a bonus pro here, but Mercedes-Benz does my favorite integration of auto hold at a stop sign or stoplight. So I want to show you here. We're pulling up to the stop sign and this van is taking their sweet time. I come to a stop. Now, a lot of vehicles have an auto hold where when you come to a stop, it'll hold the parking brake for you so you don't have to keep your foot on the brake. Mercedes right now, if I release, it's going to keep going. But if I hold the brake and then do a quick push, then I get the little hold indicator and then our auto hold is on. That's a really clever way of having it not be intrusive, where you're just coming to a light, quick stop at a stop sign, and all of a sudden your auto hold kicks in and then you press the gas and it has to jerk to remove the parking brake. That's what you get in most vehicles. But if you're here in the Mercedes and then you're coming to a full stop light and you know you're going to be stopped for 30 seconds, you can just give that brake pedal a little bit of an extra and then it does the auto hold, and then when you go to release, it's a very smooth departure. So very clever design there for Mercedes. Again, a simple feature that most vehicles have, but Mercedes does it better. So the Mercedes GLC Coupe is a bit of a weird vehicle, but what I appreciate is that weird vehicles exist. If you're somebody who is of the means to drop $67,000 on a compact crossover like this, and you like the styling of this kind of coupe SUV here, then we shouldn't be dismissive of the fact that we get to have cool things in the automotive world. The diversity of the automotive landscape is something that makes cars so cool. And the fact that, yeah, if you want the more boring and practical version of the GLC, get that. But if you want the more styled version, get this. I mean, we should applaud Mercedes for giving us both. So before we wrap up totally, we need to put the Mercedes-Benz GLC 300 Coupe on the Daily Motor leaderboard. Current leaders on the leaderboard are the Kia EV9, the Hyundai Ioniq 6, and the Toyota Tacoma. Now, despite me liking this vehicle, I do admit that it's expensive, and it doesn't necessarily scream some sort of revolutionary product. I mean, when we're looking at things like the Tacoma, the LC500, the E-Sprinter even, they all have kind of uniquenesses that put them up in the top 10 for me. So for me, I like the car. I don't want this ranking to make you think that it's not good. It's just the fact that it's almost very good in its specificness and its blandness in a lot of ways. So I'm going right here, 19th place, below the Acura MDX and above the BMW i5. There's a lot that this car does really well. It's just that it's simple. It's straightforward. It's for a very specific user. And if you are that very specific person, it's going to be great. But other than that, as the general car landscape goes, it's fairly forgettable. And there is a beauty in that. So thank you all so much for watching. If you do want to see more on the GLC Coupe, check the link below. We've got a little breakdown of the Burmester sound system. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor. And as always, drive on.